Alsinkutti is a man 41 years old who has a small fish farm, and once a man approaches his house and says, Mr. Alsinkutti in a Manglish accent. The Englishman probably came with an idea of growing fish in the pond and selling them. With this idea, Mr. Ellison Kuti was not that satisfied, but his wife, Mariam, thought that the fish farming proposal by the visitor was a good idea, and she even thought that the visitor was an angel sent by God to work miracles for them and solve their financial problems. After this, the visitor left the house and the couple visits their Bapa's house to get his opinion. With much efforts, Mariam was successful in convincing her Bapa for the fish farming proposal, and the couple again visits the American man. With his advice, the pond was being cleaned and disinfected. The very next day, a plump pink fish was being dropped into the pond, and after which the whole story turns. Because the newly introduced big fish has eaten up all the small fishes of the pond. Okay, so this was just the outline of the whole story. The main theme of the story will be discussed now. So, through this story, it is being convinced that one of the most important changes that took place during the 20th century in India with the implementation of LPG, that is, liberalization, globalization, and privatization. Mainly in this chapter, we'll be discussing how globalization erupted all the small shops in India. And as the title of the chapter, The Big Fish, which stands as a metaphor for globalization, suggests that how the introduction of a big fish into the pond was the cause of death of all the small fishes of the same pond. In the same way, globalization was the cause for the disruption of all the small scale business setups and shops in India. And so the story begins with the conversation of 41 years old Alison Kutti and a visitor who speaks in a Manglish accent, who is carrying a briefcase in his left hand and a hat with stars in his right hand. The visitor probably came up with an idea of fish farming, to which growing fishes in the pond and selling them. But to this idea, Alison Kuti was not that satisfied, but Mariam seemed interested with this idea. But the reaction of Alison Kuti was totally different. As he says, Oh my god, growing fish in the pond and selling them? What more do I need to bring curse of my ancestor upon me? To this, the visitor tries to convince Mr. Ellison Kuti by showing him a path towards a more comfortable life, and to which Mariam involuntarily steps a forward step and even asks Ellison Kuti to listen him carefully because it's all about their good. Since Mariam was much interested in this idea, she soon brings a glass of tea and a plate of small rolls of boiled ripe ninjaparam strewn with coconut scrapings. However, the visitor preferred for a Pepsi in spite of the offered snacks. Finally, when the visitor leaves their home, he says the following words. Remember, it is a golden opportunity, the choice is yours, and sky is the limit. After the departure of the visitor, Mariam tried to convince Ellison, but Ellison was not satisfied with the idea. Finally, Mariam and Ellison decides to go to Bapa and discuss the situation with him, and they set out the same evening to meet Bapa. At the junction, they stopped at the sight of a horde of policemen. Allison tried up the situation. He saw a small group of young men blocking a jeep in the middle of the road and shouting slogans. He could hear the slogans clearly. Yankee Lashki, go home. Say no to Killer Cola. Okay, so this scene of slogans against cola is most probably being discussed over here to analyze how the introduction of cola into India has changed the economy of India in most probable ways. Okay, anyhow, the couple reaches Bappa. So, Bappa is a man who always is conscious about the virtue of tradition. But Mariam successfully convinces Bappa for the fish farming idea by pouring all her troubles with Ellison Kutty and all the financial issues. And with this decision, they probably departed from there and went to visit the visitor. And the very next day, the pond was being cleaned and disinfected. And next week itself, a big plump fish was being dropped into the pond. Along with the small fishes which were already present in the pond, the big fish also started to grow over the same pond. The very next morning, when Ellison Kutty woke up, he saw that all the small fishes were disappeared from the pond and only large fish was left. So, when just a single fish was left, he saw a large fish was eating that small fish. So, at that time, he realized that how the big fish has eaten all the small fishes of the pond. Okay, so this is how the story comes to an end and shows us how that globalization has disrupted the Indian economy.